Is this as good as it gets at Washington State? Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, previewing all the teams in the Power 5 and giving you our predictions for 2018 in all the conferences. We've started in the Pac-12. We've arrived in Pullman, Washington. The Cougars at 9-4, 6-3 in the conference last year. And has Mike Leach squeezed as much out of this program as is possible? And what I mean by that is, I believe it's possible to, in one particular year, win 10 or 11 games at Washington State, like we saw in 2002 when the Cougars went to the Rose Bowl. But in a year-to-year basis, like Mike Leach has achieved there at Washington State over the last 3 years and going 9-4, 8-5, and 9-4, I believe maybe this program has plateaued. Mike Leach, consider what he did at Texas Tech, 84-43, finishing ranked most of the time in the final top 25 poll. Cliff Kingsbury, in his 6 seasons, he's 30-33. So you go from winning almost 70% of your games to winning about 47% of your games. That's how good Mike Leach is. This program was down and out. He's lifted it to top 15 status most of the seasons that he has been there, certainly the last 3 at Washington State. All right, 2018 might be a year to pull back. Mike Leach, of course, was wooed by Tennessee, basically accepted the offer. Tennessee's administration and athletic director at the time was headed out to the West Coast to bring in Mike Leach. Well, that caved in. They lost their assistant coaches. They lost a ton of offensive personnel headed up by Luke Falk at quarterback. So that means the signal caller is wide open. All right, you got Gardner Minshew. He's the East Carolina transfer with the most experience. The guy that everybody out there wants to see in the spot at quarterback this year is the true freshman, the 4-star Cammon Cooper. You also have Connor Neville. He's a redshirt freshman. And you have Trey Tinsley into the mix as well. 4 quarterbacks battling for the job. It's basically down to Minshew and Cooper. All right, the wide receivers are crucial on this team. They're all over the place. This offense runs it only when they have to. Consider this. This is a team that wins most of its games, of course, and going 9-4 last season, but they still threw it 713 times. They ran it 216. 713, 216. That's the pass-run ratio for Washington State in a season in which they led most of their games. A 7-2 pass-to-run ratio. So they have to go really deep at wide receiver, and they do. All right, most of the slot guys are back. You've got Desmond Patton. He caught 35 passes last year. You've got Kyle Sweet. He had 58 receptions. Renard Bell with 40. Jameer Calvin had 33 catches. Tay Martin produced 6 touchdowns on his 31 catches. And they also signed 5 wide receivers, and they expect a few of those guys to chip in here from the 2018 signing class. All right, at running back, James Williams is back, and his most impressive statistic is, of course, his catches out of the backfield with 71. Again, I can't get over this run-pass ratio of 216 to 713 for a team that won most of its games. It's not like it was Illinois or Kansas or Oregon State losing in the fourth quarter, throwing on every play. All right, the big difference in the turnaround that Mike Leach has brought is not the pass game necessarily. Yes, basically what they've done is gone from being prolific and wild and careless to prolific and taking care of the football. But on defense, the turnaround has been almost historic. If you look at the advanced metrics of this Washington State defense, they were number 101 in the nation just a few years ago. Then they made it all the way up to 74, 63, and last season jumped all the way up to number 29 in the nation out of the 130 FBS squads. Now, those are the advanced metrics, and it of course comes against a fairly light schedule with nobody out of conference, Boise State last year, and a pretty light situation there in the Pac-12, the worst of the Power 5 conferences in 2017. So I'll put a bit of a disclaimer on the number 29 advanced metric rating of the S&P by Bill Conley of SB Nation. I'll say they were a top 45 to 50 defense, and that's saying something in Washington State because they were non-existent They were like running through toilet paper a few years ago. All right. Defensive coordinator Alex Grinch, who made all this happen for the most part, he's off to Ohio State. So can they maintain their defensive prowess here in 2018 with Tracy Claeys, the former Minnesota Golden Gophers head coach, as the new defensive coordinator? The defensive line is shot. They have basically no depth, no playmakers, just nothing back at defensive front. So they need to find some players and find them somewhere to back up the rest of the defense, which is pretty darn good. The linebackers are really good. You've got Jahad Woods, who had 11 tackles for loss last season, and also Justice Rogers with 3 sacks. The secondary's completely back. The entire secondary comes back for Washington State, led by Jalen Thompson, who led the entire team with 73 tackles and 4 interceptions, and also the third leading tackler on the defense, Robert Taylor, 63 total tackles and 3 interceptions. All right, Washington State, you play nobody in the non-conference. You get no respect from me. I don't know if you checked out our scheduling analysis and rankings, but Washington State with one of the worst or easiest schedules in the country, which may help prop up the record just a bit. They're going to go 3-0 non-conference. Most likely 3-0 non-conference. They're going to be a favorite in all 3 games, but they've got a bit of a tricky game in Laramie, Wyoming to take on the Cowboys. And Washington State, even during this prosperous time, has been known to drop one to an Eastern Washington or an FCS school. Well, they've got a pretty good Mountain West team to deal with in Wyoming. So I'm going to say they lose that game to the Cowboys on the road. So that's 2-1. And then they're going to struggle, I believe, in the Pac-12 this year. I see 4 wins in the Pac-12. I think it's fairly clear-cut. They, of course, have to run into Oregon, Stanford, and Washington in their own division. They've got a date against USC. I'm seeing 4 wins on the slate this season after winning 6 and 7 games in conference over the past few years. So it's a down year for Washington State. They have no experience, basically, or high-level experience at quarterback. They've lost their real premier playmakers that they had a few years ago at wide receiver. The defensive line is shot. The back 7 on defense is pretty good, especially by Pac-12 standards. So Washington State makes it back to postseason play, but just barely at 6-6, 4-5 in the Pac-12. Those are my thoughts on Washington State. Leave your record for Wazoo down in the comments section. And, of course, if you do some Amazon shopping, you need to pull the link of any of the links that you see in the description section right there to help out the channel, and do it right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We will see you next time with the rest of the Pac-12.